another successful trip and a good introduction to Zeemods Caterpillar C15. That's a really nice engine to work hard. Not so good mileage wise, but that's okay, right? Well, I've got plenty of time till I've got to take my rest, so I'm going to buy some diesel and find something else to do. To pay how much for diesel? That's a little expensive. That's a lot expensive. That's all my money expensive. You's having a laugh. Well, I guess I better talk about saving fuel then. I'm a few miles down the road. I've collected this beautiful £44,000 combine harvester and I am taking it on a bit of a trip, but over $20,000 to top up the tank. Yeah, this trip to Camp 30, I'm gonna have to save a little bit of fuel. But as luck would have it, American Truck Simulator, yes it's a game and yes it's got the word simulator in the title, it does follow some real world conventions when it comes to conservation of energy, and in that context I mean saving a little bit of fuel. So here are my top 6 tips, maybe a few bonus ones, as to how you can stretch your tank that little bit further. My first tip is the shorter drive. So what do I mean here? Well, it's obvious enough. You take the shorter route to get to where you're going, even if your miles per gallon figure may be lower.
Bitte links halten.
Assuming you drive the same way, the shorter the trip, the least fuel you burn. And I would just like to point out to my wife, if she's listening to this, that this doesn't mean that she gets to drive because she's short. Moving on, the second in my list is slower speeds. The faster you drive, the more power you need to overcome the aerodynamic or the wind resistance. There's other friction at play here too. Wind resistance increases in proportion to the square of the change in speed, which means if you increase speed by just 10%, you increase your wind resistance by 21%, or you increase the amount of fuel you burn by 21%, all being equal. And as a footnote, these things never are always equal, but you get the idea. Small increase in speed, bigger increase in fuel burnt. Number 3 is the short shift, but as I drive along, I've not got any opportunity to really show this. All I mean by short shifting is you don't use the engine revs completely. So for this Caterpillar, I'm not holding it out to 15 or 1700 RPM every time I change gear. I'm using a 13-speed transmission, so I can skip a gear. I'll maybe increase revs to 1400 RPM and shift 1 or 2 gears depending on my road speed and so on and so forth. The faster the engine spins, the more friction and the higher your fuel burn is. This also correlates with a slower speed because, assuming that you use the gearbox correctly, at a lower speed you've got lower engine revs. So at 55, as I'm doing here, deliberately to save fuel, engine's turning over at 1200 RPM. If I wanted to cruise at 65, it would be closer to 1500. Now my next one, number 4, is avoid stopping. And this one's tough, because in the city or at stoplights or even a stop sign, you must stop, at least if you don't want to get a ticket. And on the highway, well, you shouldn't be stopping anyway, but it takes a lot more energy to get an object moving from rest than it does to sustain it moving forward. That little bit of physics basically means that if you stop, you need a bit more power to get the thing rolling again, versus if you can just let the thing coast up to the light, especially if you are anticipating it's about to change to green.
Bitte links halten.
That is such a beautiful segue into point number 5, which is anticipation, or mind reading. This is a really broad topic. All we mean here is, if you can reasonably expect something to happen, drive accordingly. So some examples. If you're coming up to a stoplight and it's green, and you've seen it's been green for a while, you could reasonably expect it's going to go to red. So you don't want to be accelerating. Lift off completely, let the truck coast. If you're coming to a hill, and if you're below the posted speed limit, you might want to start the truck accelerating before you reach the bottom of the hill. That extra few miles per hour worth of speed helps you climb the hill. You'll bleed off speed as you go up, or you may bleed off speed.
Rechts halten und dann Ausfahrt rechts nehmen.
But you may not need to change down, or you may need to change down once as opposed to twice.
Nimm die Ausfahrt rechts.
I tell you, trying not to speak over her is difficult. But that leads me on to changing gear, because every gear change is generally wasted fuel. At least with the manual or the automated manual. So there are times when you can skip a gear and it's vastly beneficial. I think the best example I can think of is you're joining a freeway and you're descending onto it. You can often skip 2 or 3 gears. You can short shift along. You can use gravity to build up acceleration. And also when you pull off a freeway and you're pulling up over the road, you don't always need to brake. You can lift off sooner and let go. My bad, I was too busy talking, not looking in my mirrors. Oopsie. So where was I? Just about. Using gravity to help you speed up or slow down depending on the gradient and what you're doing. Skipping gears as well, I guess. And my 6th point is spec your truck appropriately. And this one is very much open to interpretation, because it depends on how you drive, depends on the loads you want to haul, the loads that you do end up hauling, the speeds you want to travel at, and sometimes the way that you drive. So what I mean here is, I guess you don't always need the 600 horsepower engine, but don't always go for the 350 horsepower engine and think you're going to save fuel. A least powerful engine that has to spend longer working hard, and right now is a great example of that, going up this hill in a lower gear. Anyway, so yeah, the smaller engine working at its full capacity will often be working longer at that full capacity. So climbing a hill, you'll lose speed. When you get to the flat, you've got to work the thing at full power to get back up to your cruising speed. Usually burns more fuel than a more powerful engine that doesn't have to burn at its full strength the whole time. Now that's a massive oversimplification of how the game works and absolutely how real life works. You take something like the stock Caterpillar C15, the king of the hill, the 625 horsepower. You know, I can get some pretty good economy figures from that engine, especially driving in California, driving at the speed limit. I can get better economy from the 500 horse, 1850 foot-pounds of torque ISX 15. But I gotta drive it sensibly. Now, the C15, it's so tempting to just go everywhere at 90 because you can. But that doesn't save you fuel. So my hard and fast rules are a little bit vague, but for the most part, all you ever need, a bunch of caveats, is a 1650 to an 1850 foot-pound torque engine. Yes, you can do most of the same with it, a less powerful or more powerful engine, but overall, somewhere in the mid-range is largely the sweet spot. And it's no surprise that most engines that produce that amount of torque
Rechts halten.
are in the
Dann
4 to
Ausfahrt
500
rechts
horsepower
nehmen.
range. It's equally no surprise that that's the most popular power output engine for the American truck
Nimm die
market.
Ausfahrt
And here's my
rechts.
exit. Another general term is if you can get the same output from a smaller engine.
Biege nach links ab.
Yeah, so from the small engine, you typically use a little less fuel than you do from the larger one. So the stock Cummins ISX 12, there's a 425 horse, 1650 foot-pounds. A little bit less power than the stock ISX 15 with 450 horse and the same torque, but tends to use a little bit less fuel. Why would it use less fuel if it can burn the same amount of fuel? Well, lower friction, lower rotational inertia, lower mass, lower weight. Essentially, when you're idling, it's using a bit less fuel because there's less of it to turn over.
Demnächst rechts abbiegen.
Well, we're almost here.
Biege nach rechts ab.
And if you're wondering why I know all these numbers on these engines, I have a head for numbers and I'm
Demnächst
a bit
links
of a dork.
abbiegen. Biege nach links ab.
So I think the crazy thing is I've tried pretty hard to save fuel on this trip and put these 6 rules into practice. And I think I've done okay. Well, I'm going to find out soon. But I guess I would say, if you enjoyed this kind of commentary and nerd talk and mileage and fuel burn and etc., go ahead and click the like down below. If you haven't liked it, you just want to see me go fast, click the dislike and leave a comment. And if you want to see me do a 27-point turn in an attempt to park, yeah, you should probably let me know as well. Well, let's coast this Kenworth to a halt and check the numbers.
Wir sind
Yes,
fertig.
dear. Let's see. What have we done for this rather unaerodynamic shape? No, just gonna, yeah, skip it. Alright. Okay. 288 miles and under 42 gallons, that's almost 7 miles per gallon, which is a big improvement from the last trip. Well, as I said before, like, dislike, subscribe if you want to see more of these. I hope you've had a good day, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.